Hello and welcome again to Young Generation Presents. I'm your host, Jim Perales. Today we have our guest, Michael Vasquez and Gerald.
Kubena.
See, we got it there. My first question was today's topic, the importance of estate planning and why is it important? Michael, as a real estate agent here in San Antonio, why is it important?
Well, on a weekly basis, I run into people who want to sell property that it doesn't take long to find out that they don't truly own the property. And they'll swear it's my property. And as I do a little bit of research into it, I find out that they truly don't own the property. It was something that was handed down to them by their grandmother or mother or somebody in the family. And they believe that that alone makes it theirs. And that's not true in Texas. Right, and that's why Gerald's here. He's an attorney.
Oh, yes. Well, no, that's a very good point, Michael, because it's like you say, when they don't actually own the property, you're not talking about like somebody trying to scam and get property that doesn't belong to them. However, I guess it could be an issue of adverse possession or something like that, but that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about here family members, that say like the mom, grandmother, somebody passes on. Is that what we're talking about?
Right. They think, well, my grandmother left that to me, but they forget that there could be other heirs involved here. And so in Texas.
Oh, yes, right. And you're talking about there's no will, there's no other documents showing that they own the property.
Correct.
Right. And a lot of times, too, if somebody passes away, like, does the number of potential heirs, like the number of children, become an issue?
It's always been a problem. I work with distressed properties, and so I see this quite frequently, and that's why I thought it was important to bring Gerald, which is an attorney, on the program to talk about this, because there's some simple things that you can do to help avoid these really bad situations, because it gets ugly sometimes, right? One family member's fighting with another, and someone say, no, grandma said it was mine. Well, they forget that there's other heirs involved here.
Yeah.
And so Gerald wants to talk about some of the simple ways that we can handle this so that we don't have these problems later on, because these problems arise years later when they could be avoided really early. And so what my biggest thing that I want to advocate is that everybody needs to plan regardless of how much money you have. If you just own any property at all, one piece of property, you need something like what Gerald's going to talk about.
Well, definitely. I mean, because I guess there's, a misconception that I only own one house and it's not worth very much, so I really can't afford to do anything about it. But I think that necessarily isn't true. I think there's several attorneys. I'm not just speaking about myself, but there's several attorneys, I think, in San Antonio with, if you do shop around with modern technology, but that I'm saying is like with computers and stuff, it's easier for us to draft things, and it may not take, if you don't own very much, it may not take us that terribly long to draft up a document or something, be it a will. Of course, with a will, there'll be probate later, but something at least like a will, or maybe there's several deeds too. There's like a ladybird deed or like a transfer on death deed that may fit your needs, and those can be drafted relatively quickly, depending upon your situation.
Right.
Wow.
And of course, the more that the bigger your estate is, and the more children you have, that you maybe do need something that's a little bit more complicated, like a trust or anything. But especially like with helping the community, like you're saying, Mike, I think a lot of times people who maybe didn't have very much pass away, and maybe the only thing they had was their house, and then it's a shame for people to maybe sometimes even lose that property, correct, to maybe back taxes or.
I had a question. Can you speak about the simple estate planning options that are available?
Oh, yes, sir. Oh, yeah, sure. I said, well, you can always do a will, which is, like I said, depending upon the complexity of it, it may not be like that expensive, and sometimes it's better than having nothing. Michael, I think it's a good that you mentioned something very good about possible fighting that could become involved, because even if it's it's really tragic too if say it's just one piece of property and they're, like you were saying, they say there were several kids and then maybe one of the kids passed away, and then of course by Texas intestate law, where there is no will, if there's no documentation, say one family member, like one son or daughter passed away but they had children, so then those children would take that portion that the son or daughter had. So you're talking about in order to save money and avoid litigation, you're talking about everybody has to agree, and then a lot of times people may agree before someone passes away, but then again, when someone passes away, people may start to think differently.
All the time.
All the time. It's not only because there's money involved, but they may think, well, mom loved me too, and I should get the same thing. Whereas maybe mom maybe had some different ideas. Mom maybe figured one child already has property and they're doing great, so she wants to give it to the other child. Maybe, several times too, maybe one family member gave up their career, their job to take care of the parent, so the parent feels that they should inherit the home because they provided so much more care to them in the last few years of their life as compared to the other children.
I had a question. This is a good one because I didn't understand it at first, but would you speak to process of a will versus Todd or Lady Bird?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like I said, well, I think the first thing, like you said, Mike, what you mentioned is important. Like, people think that someone passes away, that the property magically becomes theirs. That's not true. There has to be something in writing. And and if and I guess the easiest way to do that is to for the person who owns the property, and also too, while the person is competent and they have mental capacity to know what they're doing, know about their estate, either to sign a will or even to sign a deed. We do want the person signing it to know what they're doing, obviously. But if there's nothing in writing, well then it has to be something in writing, so that means there has to be some court order or something. And like I said, a will, wills are fine, of course, but depending upon the complexity of it, it may be very inexpensive, a few $100s to draft if somebody doesn't have that much. But also there's other options too to avoid. But of course, a will would have to be probated.
See, that's where, I'm not an attorney, right? Gerald's the attorney, and that's why he's here. He can speak to the law. But I work with a lot of economically disadvantaged people, right? And so I see some of the day-to-day problems that they have, and I know that a will costs money. So sometimes you'll find an attorney or somebody will do a will for you relatively inexpensively, right? Maybe $300 or $400. There's some attorneys that charge up to $1,500, and it can just go from there.
That's correct.
But we have the cost of a will. Then we have the process of having to probate it once that person is no longer with us, and that takes time. And not only time, but it takes a little bit more money, because once again, you're going to have to hire an attorney to probate this will for you. So the expense to me is a little higher than some of these alternatives, and that's why I'm a big advocate for the Todd. It's called a transfer on death deed,
yes,
right, or a ladybird deed.
Yes.
So these deeds are relatively inexpensive, depending on where you go, and Gerald can write one up for you. But it's all that is needed at that time of passing is going to be that deed that you've already created. Right, so there's not going to be any more expense. It's already been taken care of, and so it saves time, it saves money, and a lot of fighting that happens within families. I've seen good families, even my own family, where grandma passes away, and everybody was happy till that point, and all of a sudden now there's a lot of infighting about property, money, and so forth. So if you take care of this ahead of time, while you're still healthy, You can still reason properly. You can still talk to your family and let them know what your wishes are. You can discuss, and we can go back and forth. It just makes things, to me, so much simpler to take care of it.
Oh yes.
Now.
Oh yes. No, that definitely is true, Mike. Like you said, because with the will, obviously the will would have to be probated. Have to be probated within 4 years, of course. Usually, there are exceptions to that. But like I said, in like you mentioned, you specifically mentioned like a ladybird deed, which is really a life estate where transferring your property ownership to a beneficiary. And of course, the TOD too, it designates you retain ownership of the property during your lifetime, but upon death, they'll transfer your beneficiary. And after someone becomes deceased, really all that's required is a affidavit to be filed with the more or less proof of death.
Right, so maybe you get a certificate, right? You get the death certificate
you could use that as like proof, and maybe just drafting a simple affidavit, and which is relatively inexpensive. You file that after the person passes away, so that it's officially in the the deed records or the real estate records that the person passed away. So this deed, like I said, the transfer and death deed, for instance, it doesn't really property doesn't really transfer until the owner is deceased. But then once you file the affidavit, that's proof they're deceased, and then the transaction is completed, and that's all you need to do.
So let me give you another example why I like these TODs, these ladybirds, is because many times when someone passes away, there may be taxes owed already, and the family members, most people do not have the money or the finances to make up those back taxes. So it's more of a burden. And what they need to do is to be able to get ownership of the property and sell it, right? So
that's true.
That's just something else I see. So a mom passed away or dad passed away. We have this property, but I can't afford it. The other brother or sister can't afford it, but we need to do something. And the problem here, once again, if there was no will, if there was no ladybird or TOD in place, now we have what I call time is of the essence, right? Now I know that's a legal term, and maybe it does not apply here, but for us individually it does, because now the house is tied up. You got to figure all this stuff out, and it takes time, and there's money lost here. So when we have these things in place, it just makes it so much easier to either sell the property or the property just goes over to whoever the person designated without much issue. Because to me, I see this on a regular basis. I'm telling you, I see it weekly, right? When I talk to people, one of these deals comes up where they don't own the property. They think they do, but they really don't, because there are other heirs, brothers, sisters, cousins that have a interest in that property that they're not even aware of. And then another problem arises is when you do approach these other heirs, then they want money. When people realize, you know what, oh, I'm an heir because my mother died and now I have rights to grandma's property, although you think it's going to you, they have to sign off on it. And if they don't, there you are. There's the fighting. And I'm telling you, this is completely avoidable if you just take care of these things now. I can't preach that enough.
Well, yeah, that's true.
It's so simple to take care of these issues today versus waiting till after you pass away and then you leave a mess for other people to kind of clear up.
Oh yes, definitely. I think one real tragic thing that can happen too, like you were mentioning, is that say it's just one piece of property and it's not worth it's worth, it has value, but it's not like worth like it's hard to say like what a lot of money is, but there's one piece of property, and then say there's several children, several potential owners of the property. So the thing is, once you split it up, it doesn't become a lot of money when you divide the pie up. So then a lot of people, if they fight, it winds up, they don't do anything, and then the property just sort of disappears. Nobody gets anything.
That's the same. My dad, when he passed away, he had a property in Pandora, Texas. And like you said, there's when the feuding started. And the the final decision was nobody got the house, and it turned it over to the state or something, or the county, Pandora,
they foreclosed
Texas.
On it. They foreclosed on the
and
property.
Everybody lost out on it. So this, what I see you guys doing is an opportunity, before the person passes, to have this established. Mr. Vasquez, I was going to say, if somebody called you, can you speak to them in Spanish about this?
Unfortunately, even though I'm Hispanic, I don't speak much Spanish.
Well,
but I do understand it very well. But my Spanish is not very well.
Well, that's where I come in. I do television programming in Spanish also. Mm-hmm. It's kind of messed up and everything, but everybody understands it. I did it in Chicago. It airs in New York, and a lot of people see it around the world. But this is something where I was going to ask you: is it what you guys do? Is it just available in the state of Texas, or if there's somebody in Illinois or New York, can they call you, or do you have like a connection over there?
Unfortunately, no. Gerald's licensed in the state of Texas, right?
Texas, so yeah. Of course, like I said, each state has
different
laws. Yeah, the laws vary. There's different
mechanisms.
I mean, I'm sure that all states have, like I said, they have some. Well, like you were mentioning, the Todd, that was specifically created by the Texas legislature. Oh, but like for and
Lady Bird's after Lady Bird Johnson.
Well,
right?
Lady Bird. Yeah, well, actually, that's true. Lady Bird. Yeah, that's the
these are unique to Texas. Right?
Well, yeah, that's true. Like, well, Lady Bird. Well, actually, I think they do use Lady Bird deeds in some other state. But the name derived. Well, that's the interesting thing. I believe the first one to use it was applied to President Johnson for his wife, Lady Bird Johnson. So that's where it's a nickname, actually. It's really what we call it. It's an enhanced life estate deed, which is it's like a combination of a trust with a beneficiary, but that's legalese. But that's very important, though. I'm sure all states have some provision for transferring your property and maybe making a I'm sure most states do have some designation, and you would either contact local council in your community. And of course, like I said, the thing is too, if you don't have a lot of money or something, realize the importance of possibly shopping around, because you may be tempted to Google a name or something, and the first few names that pops up, it may be a huge law firm with a lot of overhead, and maybe shop around, find like a sole practitioner or something, and contact them, and it'll be less of a charge.
There's something else I want to mention. Why it's so important to have these things in place, because sometimes, right, we don't know what the future holds. We have no clue what's going to happen, right, today, tomorrow. But what happens a lot, that I've seen this happen a lot here, is people get sick and they go in a nursing home, and then at some point, if you get aid from the government, like from Medicaid, for instance, they're going to want their money sometime in the future, right? So if you accept this aid, it's not free. And so if we have something in place, then that may help with that. But that's something we can talk about. You can call Gerald up and set an appointment. But there's reasons why these are important to have in place.
Yeah.
I want to share another little story. Me and Gerald worked on this case this week. I got a call from another real estate agent asking me if I could help her locate somebody. People know I'm good at finding people. I can find just about anybody, right? So she said, "Can you help me locate this particular individual?" Because he had bought some property with her client who wants to sell her property, right? So this lady is in her late 70s, bought this property when she was in her 40s with this other gentleman, right? They were, I guess, dating each other. I don't know if they were living together, but she says, "Can you find him? Because she wants to sell that property." So me and Gerald got together. Within a day, we found the gentleman, right? We were able to locate him. And we went, he lives out of town. We traveled out of town, and we got the documents we needed. But she was very fortunate that we were able to do that. He was willing to sign a deed over to her. But the point of the story is, if you buy property with somebody, and you're not married, you better check with an attorney. You know, because she didn't even know this gentleman's date of birth. She didn't know really where he lived. She didn't know anything about him other than she hadn't seen him in about 40 years. So,
oh yes,
that's why I'm saying
that's true. Yeah,
if you're gonna do it.
Oh yeah, well, luckily, like you said, in your situation, you know, like the other owner, you know, he was amicable and he did. He just felt that he hadn't
contributed anything.
Yeah, he hadn't. He really hadn't. He hadn't made any of the payments on the property or anything, and he didn't want to fight anybody. He didn't want to claim any portion of the property. You know, he just he was, you know, he wanted to be amicable and just resolve the issue quickly.
His wife.
However, had he not wanted to do that, then I mean, my goodness, then she would have probably
either not been able to sell it.
She wouldn't. Well, if he wouldn't have had agreed, she would have had to probably offer him a lot of money to agree to the sale. And if he wouldn't have wanted to do that, if he would have just wanted to do nothing, the only way to sell it would have been some litigation, you know. And then you never know how that litigation would have turned out. And
so the point here, once again, is all this is avoidable. There's tons of stories we could share with you, but most things are avoidable if you seek some counsel, right? Whether you speak to an attorney like Gerald, or you just call your real estate agent that you know. I would hope you'd call me, but there's so many real estate agents in San Antonio. Speak to somebody and get some advice.
Oh yeah,
right?
Well, the other, like I said, the other issues too is like also too. I think most people, if they have their option, they want to say where the property goes. It's theirs, so they want to determine like who gets it, what's the best options will be for their heirs, and also I guess another thing too is that there's the old saying like, well, I mean, God doesn't promise us tomorrow, right? You know what I mean? So even if I guess that's another important point too. Even if even if you're in good health and stuff, and you're,
I had someone asking me this yesterday. She was an elderly person that had some properties thinking about selling. So her conflict, I should say, or what her thing was trying to say, well, do I leave it to my son or should I sell it and disperse some of the money? And I said, well, you know, that's your decision, but if you're asking me what I would do, and I'm just giving you my opinion, I say, why not sell the property, take that money, and then see the joy that they receive when you give them that money, whether you give some to your grandchildren, a portion to them, give some to your son. I mean, it gives you pleasure, right? Well, you know, I have 2 daughters and I love them very much. So as a parent, when you do something for your children, it's just a great feeling. So I told her, why not enjoy that feeling now that you're alive than waiting till you pass and then, you know, they figure it out.
Well, that's true. That's true. And and I mean, if that was her desire, that's definitely, you know,
she's still thinking it over,
but it's her property, and perhaps like
enjoy it.
There's another, I mean, that may be an option for people, and maybe there's another option too. Maybe they want to, like I said, there's several alternatives, and there's even property also can be transferred to a trust, but that's, you know, a matter for another day. I don't want to get into that. And maybe, you know, well, that could be important too. There's minor children that you want to inherit your property, or.
I had a question, and I know everybody will ask this question. Is it simpler process when transferring through a Todd or a Ladybird deed?
Like I said, each has their advantages and some disadvantages. It all depends upon your situation. But the good thing about it, though, it's essentially with each, you more or less, you can maintain some control upon your property. You shouldn't.
Are they revocable? That's a good question.
Yeah,
I know you had asked me about that earlier
they
today.
Are. They are revocable.
So
you can always
change your mind.
Yes, you can change your mind.
Wow.
Yeah, they're both either expressly, I believe. Well, you can either. There may be a situation you can expressly revoke it, or just do a new Todd, a new Ladybird to overcome the other ones. And I do believe too, like the one thing with the Todd, the transfer on death deed, if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that a transfer on death deed will trump a will. So even if you do have a will, that's one thing too. Well, see, that's why situations are specific. You have a will and you leave it to one person, but then you do like a Todd to another beneficiary. I believe that the beneficiary in the Todd will go ahead and trump. And of course, that's if the transfer on death deed is properly recorded.
You see, if one daughter doesn't want to take me to the Cowboys game and the other one says, Dad, I'll take you.
Well, I mean, there we go.
I want to.
Well, you can use it as leverage, I guess, right? I mean, but I don't know if you should be making such important decisions based upon a Cowboys game. But I mean, I could understand. That's of course.
That's very good information about, and like I say, hablan español también. Si ustedes quieren información de la Todd o la Lady Bird, ellos te pueden decir o yo puedo explicar de eso. Aquí en el televisión o en Facebook también, Michael Vasquez y Gerald también te puede decir cosas. I want to say thank you, you guys, for being on the show. There's a lot of other information I want to ask, but we'll do that on the next show. But I'm glad you guys came on. This is an informational part that the people need to know. I want to make a shout out to Xiaomi, Shishe Nihama. She's in New York and she's a good friend. We talk, and happy Lunar New Year. I learned about that also, and she's watching the show, and they watch the show over there in New York. That's why I asked you if there's like a sister connection over there through the Todd or the Ladybird. Maybe it's a different thing.
It's probably different, but definitely, no matter where you live, you should do something, with do something not only to ease your mind, but also to ease the problems your children or your heirs may experience once you pass.
Do you have a shout out, Tim?
I do. I want to call out Naomi's Diner in Lytle, Texas. We call it Little Texas sometimes, but it's Lytle, Texas.
Oh,
it's about 12 miles south of 1604, off 35 south. Little town of Lytle. She's got the best chicken fried steak you could ever have.
Love it.
Seriously.
There. Oh, wow.
It's Naomi's Diner.
Oh, man. I haven't had lunch yet. Why did you mention? No, just kidding. No, that's fine. We should go.
Well, he brought me something, and thank you. My birthday was yesterday, so.
Oh, happy birthday, Jimmy! Hey,
man. 19 plus tax.
Okay? Yeah, plus tax. Well, there you go.
But you got to shout out to anybody you want to say hi to.
I hadn't even thought. I just would like to just say hello to all my friends and family out there, and everyone else. We appreciate everyone who's watching, I guess. And
well, thank you, Jimmy, for having us on the show. Really appreciate it.
Sure, we do have another show coming up. I want to say thank you, Mayor Nuremberg, for a wonderful San Antonio. It's growing crazy. A lot of people from different states are moving here. I want to thank Frank and Leon here, access coordinators.
Thank you.
For the TV shoot, the city council, thank you. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have a TV show here. I've been doing this for 23 years, 24. I forgot we're 23 now, 2023. But thank you all. Thank you, Gerald. Thank you, Mike. Mm-hmm. And I hope we can meet again. And we will meet at Naomi's, okay?
That sounds great. We gotta go. Bill's on you, Mike, okay? No.
We buy, he pays.
Yeah, there you go.
I like that. I'll have to remember that one.
Well, thank you all for tuning in. Young Generation Presents. I'll see you when I see you.